It was 7:12 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday morning in Seattle when I stirred cream into my coffee. My phone buzzed on the counter. The email subject line read, "Final notice, divorce processing." My hand froze mid-stir. I opened it with trembling fingers while my toddler babbled happily in her high chair. The first attachment loaded slowly. There he was, my husband Adrian, wrapped around a blonde girl who couldn't have been older than 23. They stood inside the lakefront vacation home I had bought with my own money before our marriage. My stomach twisted. The second attachment was worse. A digital signature request to transfer my consulting firm's intellectual property rights to him. My knees buckled. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. How could he do this? We'd been married for 6 years. I'd built my entire business from nothing while supporting his career. And this was how he repaid me. I looked at my daughter, still innocent and smiling. She had no idea her father had just destroyed our family with a single email. I scrolled down and saw another email I'd somehow missed. It was sent 4 minutes earlier than the first one. The subject line said, "Consider this your official replacement." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a selfie of Adrian and the blonde girl clinking champagne glasses. Behind them, spread across my dining table at the vacation home, were my research files. My proprietary algorithms. The work I'd spent 5 years developing. They were celebrating over my life's work like it was nothing. The girl wore a smug smile, her arm draped possessively over Adrian's shoulder. He looked so pleased with himself, so confident. The caption beneath the photo read, "To new beginnings and better partnerships." I felt bile rise in my throat. This wasn't just betrayal. This was calculated cruelty. They'd planned this moment, staged this photo, sent these emails to break me. But as I stared at that image, something shifted inside me. The shock began to fade, replaced by something colder. Something sharper. They thought I'd crumble. They had no idea what was coming. I called my lawyer immediately. Her name was Patricia, and she'd helped me set up my consulting firm 3 years ago. She answered on the second ring. I explained everything through gritted teeth, the emails, the photo, the signature request. There was a long pause. "Celeste," she said carefully, "I need to tell you something. Adrian contacted my office 2 weeks ago trying to dissolve your consulting firm. He claimed he had power of attorney." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell him?" I asked. I refused, obviously. He doesn't have that authority. But he was very insistent. I thanked her and hung up, then immediately checked my bank accounts. My heart sank. There was a flagged transaction from 3 days ago. Someone had attempted to withdraw $15,000 using administrative access linked to Adrian's email. The bank had blocked it, thank God. But the attempt was there, documented. Adrian hadn't just cheated on me. He'd been systematically trying to dismantle everything I'd built. This was financial sabotage disguised as divorce. An hour later, my phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. "You need to see this," it said. Attached were screenshots from what looked like a workplace messaging system. I recognized the logo. It was from Adrian's company, where he worked as Chief Technology Officer. My hands shook as I read through the messages. They were from Adrian, sent to his team over the past 6 months. "Celeste is becoming impossible to work with," one read. "She's emotional, unstable, can't handle pressure anymore." Another said, "My wife is a hysterical overachiever who'd be nothing without my guidance." The messages got worse. He'd told his colleagues I was spiraling, that I'd threatened to sabotage innovation at his company. He was painting me as crazy, unpredictable, even dangerous. And these weren't private messages. These were in public channels where dozens of people could see them. He'd been destroying my reputation while pretending everything was fine at home. I felt sick. The anonymous sender added one more message. "I'm sorry. Someone needed to tell you the truth." I spent the next 2 hours researching the blonde girl from the photo. Her name was Taryn. Finding her wasn't hard. She'd tagged Adrian in several Instagram posts from months ago. But as I dug deeper, I found something that made my stomach drop. Taryn wasn't just some random intern Adrian had seduced. She was the niece of his company's CEO, Vincent Harlow. Her Instagram bio proudly proclaimed, "Proud member of the Harlow family." I stared at my screen in disbelief. This changed everything. Adrian hadn't fallen for a young employee. This was strategic. He'd cultivated a relationship with the CEO's niece to advance his career. And now they were working together to take everything from me. The affair wasn't about love or lust. It was about power. It was about positioning himself for his next promotion while eliminating any obstacles, including me. I felt cold fury settle over me. They thought they were so clever. They thought I wouldn't figure it out. But I was already 3 steps ahead. More evidence arrived that afternoon. The anonymous source sent me additional screenshots, these from Adrian's private messages to the board of directors. "I'm concerned about my wife's behavior," one message read. "She's become erratic and paranoid. I worry she might do something to damage the company out of spite." Another said, "Celeste has been making threats. I think we need to consider security protocols." He was building a narrative, making me look unstable so that when he stole my intellectual property, no one would believe my side of the story. He'd poisoned the well before I even knew there was a problem. Several board members had responded sympathetically. "We support you, Adrian. Let us know if you need anything." They believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was their rising star, their CTO, the man leading their most important projects. And I was just the hysterical wife having a breakdown. Except I wasn't. And I had proof of everything. I remembered something crucial. I'd installed security cameras at the vacation home 2 years ago after a break-in scare. The footage was stored in the cloud. Adrian had no idea they existed. I logged into the security system and scrolled through recent recordings. My heart pounded as I found footage from 3 weeks ago. Adrian and Taryn sat in my living room, documents spread across the coffee table. The audio was crystal clear. "We need to push her out before Q4, Adrian said, pouring wine into 2 glasses. "If we wait too long, she'll figure out what we're doing." Taryn laughed. "She won't. She's too busy playing businesswoman to notice. Besides, she trusts you completely." Adrian smirked. "That's what makes this so easy. She's built this whole company thinking she's independent, but she has no idea how much control I actually have." They clinked glasses. "To taking what's ours," Taryn said. "I saved the footage to 3 separate backup drives. This was evidence. This was confession. This was everything I needed." Digging deeper into our finances, I discovered something horrifying. Adrian had opened an offshore account 6 months ago. I only found it because I still had access to our joint email, and a notification had slipped through. The account was registered in the Cayman Islands. And according to the statements, he'd been funneling money into it for months, using my consulting firm as collateral for the initial deposit. My signature appeared on several documents, but I'd never signed anything. He'd forged them. Digital forgery, using scanned copies of my signature from legitimate contracts. I felt sick. This wasn't just divorce. This wasn't just an affair. This was systematic, premeditated fraud. He'd been planning this for at least half a year, carefully positioning himself to drain our assets and leave me with nothing. I called Patricia again. "We need to file a police report," I told her. "This is criminal." She agreed immediately. "Start documenting everything. Every account, every transaction, every forged signature. We're building a case." The anonymous source reached out again, this time with information about Adrian's upcoming presentation. "Your husband is giving the keynote at the annual investor summit next week," the message read. "The entire presentation is built on stolen algorithms. I thought you should know." I pulled up the promotional materials for the summit. There it was, Adrian's name in bold letters, scheduled to present Revolutionary Predictive Analytics, the future of data strategy. I felt rage surge through me. Those algorithms were mine. I developed them over 5 years, testing and refining them for my consulting clients. They were the foundation of my entire business. And now Adrian was claiming them as his own, preparing to present my life's work to hundreds of investors as if he'd created it himself. He was going to use my research to secure his promotion, to make himself look brilliant, to launch himself into the upper echelons of his industry. On the back of my stolen work. I spent the next several days piecing together the conspiracy. It was bigger than I'd realized. Adrian, Taryn, and CEO Vincent Harlow had been coordinating for months. Emails I discovered showed Vincent knew exactly what was happening. Once we have Celeste's algorithms integrated into our platform, we can close the Series C funding round, Vincent had written to Adrian. Investors are already excited. This will put us at $40 million valuation minimum. Adrian's response: she'll never know until it's too late. By the time she figures it out, the IP transfer will be complete and she'll have no legal standing. Taryn had chimed in. Uncle Vincent, I told you Adrian was the right choice. He's brilliant. This was corporate theft. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Insider manipulation. And they documented everything in writing because they never imagined I'd find it. They thought I was too trusting, too naive, too busy with our daughter to notice. They were wrong. I turned my home office into a war room. Every wall was covered with printed emails, screenshots, financial records, and timelines. I organized everything chronologically, showing exactly when each piece of the conspiracy had been put into place. I had the forged signatures, the offshore account statements, the security footage of Adrian and Taryn planning my downfall, the Slack messages where he destroyed my reputation, the emails proving Vincent's involvement. I backed up everything to encrypted cloud storage with copies sent to Patricia's secure server. I created a master document with timestamps, links, and evidence chains. Every piece was admissible in court. Every detail was verified. I even found the original versions of my algorithms, complete with metadata showing I'd created them years before Adrian claimed to have developed them. The licensing agreements I'd signed when starting my consulting firm had automatically renewed in my name. Adrian had assumed they'd expired. They hadn't. I owned everything. Patricia helped me build the legal framework. This is airtight, she said, reviewing my documentation. You have chain of custody for every piece of evidence. The forgery alone is enough for criminal charges, but combined with the corporate theft and conspiracy, this is massive. We drafted cease and desist orders targeting Adrian, Taryn, and Vincent. We prepared evidence packets for the board of directors, the investors, and the company's HR department. We filed complaints with the SEC regarding securities fraud. We contacted the FBI about the offshore accounts. We prepared account freezes, asset protections, and custody documentation showing I was a stable, loving parent while Adrian had committed multiple crimes. Everything was ready. We just needed the right moment. When do you want to execute this? Patricia asked. I looked at the calendar. The investor summit was in 4 days. During his keynote, I said, I want him to feel what I felt when I opened that email. While building my case, I found something perfect. Taryn had posted an Instagram story 3 weeks ago from the vacation home. She'd been careless, showing off the view, the expensive furniture, the lifestyle she thought she'd stolen. But in the background of one photo, clearly visible, was a whiteboard. On that whiteboard were my proprietary formulas. Complex equations I'd spent years developing. Written out in full detail. She'd posted evidence of corporate theft to her public Instagram account. I screenshotted everything before she could delete it, though knowing Taryn's arrogance, she probably never would. The timestamp, the location tag, even her caption, living my best life in paradise. It was all perfect evidence. I added it to my collection. Patricia actually laughed when I showed her. She handed you a gift, she said. This proves knowledge and intent. She knew these were proprietary, she was at the scene of the theft, and she documented it herself. Adrian's confidence grew as the summit approached. He posted on LinkedIn about his upcoming presentation, talking about breakthrough innovations and revolutionary thinking. Friends and colleagues congratulated him. His company shared the post, building hype. He gave an interview to a tech blog where he said, "My wife never saw the big picture. She was content running a small consulting business. I wanted to change the industry." The reporter asked about his inspiration. "Sometimes you have to leave behind people who hold you back," Adrian said. "I've upgraded my personal and professional life. This presentation represents everything I've been working toward." I read that interview 3 times, my anger crystallizing into something harder. He'd publicly humiliated me, called me small, limited, an obstacle he'd overcome. Everyone would see this interview. Everyone would know he'd left me. But soon, everyone would also know he was a fraud, and a criminal, and that the woman he'd left behind was the real genius. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A former engineer from Adrian's company contacted me through LinkedIn. His name was Thomas, and he'd been laid off 2 months ago. "I have something you need to hear," his message said. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Thomas looked nervous but determined. He handed me a USB drive. I recorded this before they fired me. I knew something wasn't right. I plugged it into my laptop. The audio file was from a company meeting. Adrian's voice came through clearly. "The algorithm we're presenting is actually my wife's work. She developed it for her consulting clients. But she'll never know until it's too late. By the time she figures it out, we'll have signed the investors and she'll have no recourse." Other voices chimed in, discussing how to obscure the origins and make it look like internal development. Thomas watched me listen. "I couldn't let it happen," he said. "They fired me for asking too many questions. I figured you deserved to know." I thanked him, adding the recording to my evidence. Following the money led me to Vincent's true motivation. The CEO wasn't just helping his niece's boyfriend. He had a personal stake in this theft. His company was preparing for a Series C funding round worth $40 million. The entire pitch to investors was built around Adrian's revolutionary algorithms. My algorithms. Without them, the company's valuation would drop by at least half. Vincent had bet everything on this technology. He needed it to close the deal, save his company from declining quarterly reports, and secure his own position. If investors discovered the algorithms were stolen, the funding would evaporate. The company could face lawsuits. Vincent could lose everything. That's why he'd coordinated with Adrian. That's why he'd brought Taryn into it. This wasn't just about helping family. This was about corporate survival. And they'd decided I was acceptable collateral damage. They'd sacrifice my life's work to save themselves. I added Vincent's financial records to my evidence pile. His desperation would be his downfall. Then Adrian played his cruelest card. Court documents arrived at my door. He'd filed for emergency custody of our daughter, claiming I was emotionally unfit due to invented instability and paranoid delusions. The filing cited his messages to the board as evidence. It referenced my erratic behavior and concerning threats. He'd twisted everything, made his own crimes look like my mental breakdown. He wanted to take my daughter, my baby, the one innocent person in all of this chaos. He was willing to destroy her childhood, to paint her mother as crazy, just to win. I sat on the floor of my daughter's room, surrounded by her toys, and cried for the first time since this nightmare began. But then I looked at the evidence spread across my office. Adrian had made a mistake. He'd put his lies in writing. And I had proof of the truth. He wouldn't take her from me. When this was over, he'd be lucky if he ever saw her again. The breakthrough came when I reviewed my original licensing agreements. When I'd founded my consulting firm 3 years ago, I'd been meticulous about intellectual property rights. Every algorithm, every piece of research, every innovation was registered under my name with automatic renewal clauses. I'd done this specifically to protect my work from corporate theft. Adrian had assumed these agreements expired after the initial term. He'd based his entire plan on that assumption. But he was wrong. The agreements had automatically renewed last month. I owned everything. The version of the algorithms Adrian had stolen, modified, and planned to present, they were all still legally mine. Every derivative work, every application, every use case. He had no legal right to any of it. This was my nuclear weapon. The moment he presented those algorithms publicly, he'd be committing copyright infringement in front of hundreds of witnesses. And I'd have proof of intent, conspiracy, and corporate fraud. Patricia nearly jumped when I showed her. "This is it," she said. "This is everything." We spent 2 days coordinating the counterattack. Every piece had to fall into place simultaneously. Patricia filed cease and desist orders to be served the moment Adrian's presentation began. She sent evidence packets to the board of directors, timed to arrive in their inboxes exactly when Adrian took the stage. She coordinated with the SEC to freeze Vincent's assets pending investigation. She contacted the FBI regarding the offshore accounts. She notified the company's HR department of the evidence of fraud, harassment, and conspiracy. She arranged for account freezes on all marital assets to prevent Adrian from hiding money. She filed emergency custody motions with evidence of Adrian's crimes, his lies, and his manipulation. Every piece of the counterattack was synchronized, timed, locked and loaded. We had one shot to do this right. Patricia looked at me across her desk. "Once we start this, there's no going back. Are you ready?" I thought about that email, that photo, that smug smile. "I've been ready since 7:12 a.m. on Tuesday," I said. The day of the investor summit arrived. I watched the live stream from my office while Patricia monitored everything from her firm. Adrian appeared on screen, wearing his expensive tailored suit, looking confident and successful. Taryn stood beside him in a designer dress, beaming with pride. Vincent introduced Adrian to thunderous applause, praising his innovative thinking and groundbreaking research. Investors filled the auditorium. Tech journalists had their cameras ready. This was Adrian's moment of triumph. His vindication. His proof that leaving me was the right choice. He walked to the podium carrying a clicker for slides he hadn't created, prepared to present research he hadn't conducted, ready to claim credit for work he'd stolen. Taryn blew him a kiss from the front row. Vincent watched from the wings with satisfaction. They had no idea what was about to happen. At 2:47 p.m., Patricia sent me a single text message, "Execute." I hit send on every prepared email simultaneously. The trap was sprung. Adrian opened his laptop backstage to review his final slides. His face changed instantly. The color drained from his features. His hands started shaking. On screen, his access to the company system showed a bright red error message. "Access denied. Security violation." At the same moment, every board member's phone buzzed with incoming emails. Vincent's assistant rushed over, whispering urgently in his ear. In the auditorium, several investors stood up, checking their phones in confusion. Adrian tried to log in again. Another error. He looked at Taryn, panic spreading across his face. She was staring at her own phone, tears already forming. Vincent's face had gone white. His hand trembled as he read the email on his screen. Security alerts triggered throughout the building. The massive screen behind the podium flickered, then went dark. Adrian stood frozen at the podium, microphone in hand, as chaos erupted around him. An HR representative appeared at the side entrance. 2 security officers followed behind her. The journalists sensed something wrong. Cameras turned toward the commotion. And I watched it all happen in real time through the live stream, my daughter playing quietly beside me. The collapse was total and immediate. Taryn burst into tears when Vincent confronted her, his face purple with rage. "You knew," he shouted at his niece. "You participated in this fraud knowingly?" She couldn't speak, just sobbed into her hands. The board of directors called an emergency session right there in the auditorium. Adrian tried to explain, tried to defend himself, but security was already escorting him toward the exit. "This is a misunderstanding," he shouted. "My wife, she's unstable, she's lying, she's trying to destroy me." But the board had the evidence. The forged signatures. The stolen algorithms. The recorded confessions. One investor stood up and announced loudly that he was withdrawing his funding commitment. Others followed immediately. Within minutes, the $40 million funding round had evaporated. The company's stock price, visible on monitors throughout the building, began plummeting in real time. Vincent collapsed into a chair, his career crumbling around him. Journalists captured everything. This wasn't just a failed presentation. This was a public execution of three people's reputations, broadcast live to the entire tech industry. Adrian's exit was captured on security cameras that somehow made their way to social media within hours. He screamed about being set up as guards walked him out. "She planned this," he yelled, pointing at cameras. "My wife is crazy. She's vindictive. She's destroying everything." But the evidence was already public. Patricia had released a carefully prepared statement to the press, outlining the fraud, the theft, the conspiracy. She included just enough documentation to prove the claims without compromising our legal strategy. Tech blogs picked up the story immediately. CTO fired for stealing wife's algorithms. Tech company fraud exposed during live presentation. CEO resigns amid theft scandal. Adrian's LinkedIn profile was flooded with comments. People who'd congratulated him days ago now called him a fraud, a thief, a liar. His interview about upgrading was shared thousands of times, but now the comments mocked him. Vincent was forced to resign within 24 hours. The board launched a full investigation, discovering years of questionable practices beyond just my case. Taryn deleted all her social media accounts, but screenshots lived forever. And Adrian. He'd never work in tech again. The legal aftermath moved swiftly. With Adrian's crimes documented so thoroughly, his lawyers advised him to settle. He dropped the custody challenge immediately. He surrendered all claims to my intellectual property. He signed over his rights to everything we'd owned jointly. The offshore accounts were frozen and investigated. The forged signatures led to criminal charges. He faced years of legal battles, potential prison time, and complete professional ruin. Meanwhile, my consulting firm exploded with new opportunities. A major competitor had watched the entire scandal unfold and reached out immediately. They signed a multi-million-dollar licensing deal for my algorithms, publicly recognizing me as the sole creator and genius behind the technology. My story went viral. Articles called me the tech genius who took down corporate fraud. Speaking invitations poured in. My client list tripled. I moved into a new home overlooking the water, a beautiful place with space for my daughter to grow, far from the memories of betrayal. The vacation home where Adrian had taken that photo? I sold it for twice what I'd paid, donating the proceeds to organizations supporting women in tech. 6 months later, I stood on my deck watching my daughter play. She chased bubbles in the afternoon sun, laughing without a care in the world. She didn't understand what had happened, didn't know how close we'd come to losing everything. But she was safe now. Happy. Thriving. Inside my home office, I'd framed something. Not the divorce papers. Not the court documents declaring my victory. Not the news articles praising my courage. I'd framed a screenshot from the live stream of the investor summit. The exact moment when Adrian's face had changed, when he'd realized his access was locked, when his entire scheme had collapsed around him. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. Beneath it, I'd added a small plaque with a single sentence. They underestimated the wrong woman. Sometimes late at night, I still thought about that Tuesday morning. About opening that email at 7:12 a.m. About the photo of Adrian and Taryn smirking in my vacation home. About how completely they'd believed they'd won. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd forgotten that the woman they dismissed, the wife they thought would crumble, the mother they tried to paint as unstable, she'd built an empire from nothing. And she'd do whatever it took to protect it.